Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 8, season 2 of the Standoff with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. What around the football, Richie? Quite a few upsets with plenty of bottom 8 sides showing that they shouldn't be taken lightly.
Hi, Brad. Evening, everybody. Yeah, this had a bit of everything this round. You're right. It was fun. We had bottom teams pushing the top team to the very limit. We had a golden point game, some heart attack finishes. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of those results showed that some of the playoff teams got a bit of a wake-up call, which we're obviously going to cover in a few minutes. But while we're here live on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch the show via our podcast on iHeartRadio at your convenience. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. So as always, we're going to be covering everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of the round 6 matches and our picks. We'll then stop and answer some of your questions before we preview the round 7 clashes and our picks there. And then we'll end the night, time pending, with some overseas and Super League news. Good evening, Nigel. Good to see
Nigel.
you here. So remember to tune in and get your rugby league news, and remember to send comments and questions throughout the show. Before getting on to the news, we did have a question last week from Nigel that we ran out of time for. So let's answer it now. Richie, the question from Nigel last week was, do you believe Brownie can wake the sleeping giant we all know the Warriors are? It's a great question, so I'll let you answer it.
Thanks for that, Brad. Thanks for putting me on the spot. I think Brownie can do some good things here. I think especially with the backing he's got and with Phil Gould being on board with us, I think it's already starting to create an environment where we're a bit more appealing, recruitment-wise, and that's already shown with people like Reece Walsh and guys like that coming on board. Whether or not it brings us the trophy, I believe we're going to get it every year. So,
yeah. I'm not sure if he's the guy that can get them all the way, but I think he's definitely the guy that can get them started. If you look at the Knights, what he started there with the talent he was able to get in and the young guys he was able to develop and get them to a point where they're almost contenders. I wouldn't say they're contenders right now, but they're like on that edge. They're one of those fringe teams that can either make it or fall out of the way. So I'm hoping he can get the ball rolling. I think Phil Gould's inclusion to help get the development of the juniors sorted, I think is going to help a lot too. So I like to try to be an optimist. So I think he can get them there. But if I had my way, we'd still have Ivan Cleary as coach. So I'm hoping so. I'm hoping he can get something out of this team. They just need the injuries to kind of go their way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good question, Nigel. Thanks for that.
Yeah, hopefully we didn't sit on the fence too much on that one. But let's get into the top stories of the week. Evening, Jordan. Thanks for joining us. I think the first one we may as well talk about is All Black star TJ Piranha linked with a move to the Roosters. We know that the Roosters are the only club that don't have a salary cap, so that's always the club everyone wants to go to. But what are your thoughts on it, Richie? You're a bit of a rugby fan as well. One, do you think he'll actually make the move, and two, do you think he could actually do it?
By all accounts, it's becoming more and more likely. From what I've read, the Roosters are ramping up their pursuit of him, and apparently he could almost move within the next month or two. I'm not too sure. Yep. I'm not too sure how that plays out, but I think he's got a skill set that would translate pretty well for a Union halfback. He's one of the more rugged and sort of better defensively than a lot of the other little halfbacks running around in Union. So, and he brings a lot of upside with kicking game and passing game. He's handy at both of that. So, and he's got a good sort of he's got a good attitude on him. You can tell he's very professional with the way he trains and the way he operates with his preparation. So I'm sure he would do well if he decides to make the jump. What do you reckon?
Yeah, and I see Simon said if the Roosters pay for him, it's under salary cap, it's fine with him. And Paul's mentioned other rumours about TJ just because he's in contract negotiations with New Zealand Rugby. In terms of the salary cap thing, I know I made the joke. I think they'd be able to pay for him when you think that Jake Friend and who's the other one that's just gone off the top of my head? Jake Friend's retired, and there's another player they've lost at the Roosters. That's
escaping me right now, mate.
Yeah, it's escaping me as well. But there's I'm pretty confident that TJ wouldn't be getting more money than a Jake Friend would have. So I'm pretty sure they would be able to fit just a straight swap there. Jake Friend's gone, he comes in. In terms of, is it just coming up because of the contract negotiations? That could also be it as well. But I think in terms of rugby union, I don't know what else there is really for TJ to do. He's won a World Cup. He's played for the All Blacks. There's not really too much else to do. If it is something he wants to change, go for it. I think, he's going in as a hooker, running hooker. He can do pretty much all. And as Simon's just mentioned, TJ's a cousin of Henry Piranha, so it leagues in the family's blood. I just, before we came on air, I was mentioning with Paul that it's just a shame this came out at this point, because if it had been a month or two ago, Cameron George could have probably called up New Zealand Rugby and said, how about a swapsy? Get TJ to the Warriors and you guys can have Roger. But it is what it is. So if he does come over, it'd be interesting to see how he goes. I think basically the dummy half role, he's not going to be a kicking dummy half for the Roosters. He's just going to be a get the ball out of the ruck quick and run when you see it's on, which is kind of what he can do now.
Yeah, he. You know what else would have been nice, Brad, if he came to us to get a bit of family favoritism with his cousin, get some good decisions on our side.
I think we got the only good call we're going to get out of Henry Piranha for some time in the Raiders game. So
yeah, I think you're right.
I think we're done, and I think after that we haven't really seen him ref again. So I don't know if that would help too much. But interesting to see. We'll keep an eye on that and hopefully have some more news on that whole situation for the show next week. So the next bit of news was Trent Mirren, currently playing with the Dragons, has announced his immediate retirement. I read the press piece that he released, and he said he wanted to end his career on his terms, and basically the game's passed him by. I think what he's meaning is his style of play and his build isn't really suited to the new game. So I think he's decided to just end it while he can. Great career he had, playing for St. George, Penrith and Leeds, also playing for Australia as well. Great career for him. And it's good to see retirement come without a little asterisk on the side of it saying because of injury. So good luck for whatever he's deciding to do in his future.
Yeah, interesting reasoning. Hey, I saw that too. The game's passed me by. You don't often see that. I guess you could kind of say he's right in a sense where the game's sort of favouring more mobile forwards nowadays. Either that or he doesn't like Josh Maguire. But no, hats off to him. Great career.
Yeah, I think the writing was on the wall for him the moment they got Maguire in straight away. They're essentially the same player, just one's a bit more quicker. And Simon's just commented, is it just me or are the new rules causing a lot more retirements? I think so. I think a lot of people that are getting a bit long in the tooth are kind of seeing that these new rules aren't suited to them. You kind of need to be quick up to the pace. And if you're not, you're going to get left behind. And it's probably best for you to give it up while you can. I suppose the last thing you want is to be an experienced player that the game passes you by and you're playing reserve grade, because you don't want to give it up. But then there's players out there like Benji who are long in the tooth and are still surviving. So I think pace is definitely a key in that. So next on the news, we've got a little bit of a jumble up of signing news, because that was basically all the news we had this week. So first, earlier in the week, last week, just after our show, Carmichael Hunt signed a train and trial deal with the Broncos. Interesting news. I know he's been playing in the reserve grades this year already, after playing AFL and rugby union. Seems to be doing all right in reserve grade, but that's a completely different level. What do you think? I think he's better than most of the Broncos they've got, just based on previous form. So I think they're eyeing him up potentially in a role in the halves, and I think he's probably better than the halves they got right now.
Yeah, from what I understand, it would be to play in the halves. I think, to me, it feels like them making a move to bring some experience into the group, because they do have a very young team, and they do seem a bit sort of thin in the halves. Although on the weekend their halves actually played pretty well. But yeah, I'm not too sure how he'll go. I think he's getting on a bit in age, so it'll be interesting. I bet the Broncos fans will be romanticizing the idea that he might come back the way he was, but yeah, he's been around the block, so at the very least he brings a lot of experience to the table for them.
Definitely. And continuing with the Broncos, Danny Levi has joined the Broncos for the remainder of this season. He was a player we've talked about in the past about potentially being a target for the Warriors to bring in with their hooker issues, but they weren't interested. And the Broncos, they lost Andrew McCulloch. So they've got a great young player to come in and replace Turpin if need be, if injuries or form dictate. So great pickup. He's been playing really well in reserve grade in the Queensland Cup. So good to see him get another shot in the NRL. Because I always felt he was too good to be a reserve grader, and should have kept his NRL career going.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Brad. And I think that kind of shows in the way he's playing in the lower levels at the moment. Like you touched on, he's been going pretty good guns down in the lower levels. So he's probably just picking up a reward because of his good form there. And I agree with you. He's a player that looks like he belongs in first grade. You know, he's definitely a step above what he's been playing at the moment.
And Jackson Hastings has signed a 2-year deal with the Tigers from next year. Bit of a shame for me because he's playing okay in the UK for my team, but it was inevitable he was coming back to the NRL. I was secretly hoping he might be a guy the Warriors would look at, but I know early on last year when the rumours started, he was very disinterested in coming to New Zealand. So the Tigers, they kind of need to move something in their halves. So I think bringing him in and possibly looking at moving Brooks on somehow is probably the right move for the Tigers, because they've shown, as we'll talk about in their game, they're showing that they can compete. There's just something missing, and I think a change up in the halves will probably help.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes coming back from England. He was always earmarked as a guy with lots of potential when he started out in the NRL, and then he had his share of problems while over here, and he's gone away to England, and by all reports he's matured a lot. So hopefully he can add something to the Tigers, because like you pointed out, they kind of just look like they're missing a piece or two of the puzzle to make them a real contender.
Yeah. And then we've got a double here for the Sharks. So the Sharks have confirmed the signing of veteran centre Will Chambers for the rest of this season. And Chad Townsend from the Sharks has announced today that he signed with the Cowboys on a 3-year deal. So interesting to see that they brought Will Chambers in. I thought their centres and that aren't too bad, but Chambers is kind of a free agent. So if he's there and you can pick him up, may as well grab him for some experience. And big loss, I think, losing Chad Townsend, especially when they haven't really announced an extension with Sean Johnson or anything yet either.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Cowboys because they need a half that can push them around the field. They look like that's something they're missing. Possibly a big loss for the Sharks, but I'm pretty certain they will have their eyes open on one of the halves around the comp. I've heard murmurings, and I'm sure they're going to have a bit of coin to spend. So I think we may see a bit of a merry-go-round with some halfbacks in the coming future.
Yeah, it's there's one certain halfback that seems to be on everyone's shopping list, and Adam Reynolds. I've heard some rumors that he's apparently all but guaranteed to be an Eel.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no facts on that. That's just rumors that you hear in the rumor mill. So that's going to be an interesting development in the next few weeks, I'm sure, as more of these deals start coming around, and obviously we'll be able to keep you guys all in the loop once we find out more. But before we get into the naughty boy corner, we've got one more bit, which is the Warriors have granted Haynes Perham an early release with rumors that he will be joining the Eels. It seems to be a signed deal, but the Eels haven't announced it yet. With the massive injury toll the Warriors have got at the moment, do you think it's wise to have let him go?
Interesting timing. I almost wonder how long this one's been in the pipeline. Maybe it's been in the pipeline since before we had outside backs start dropping. But, prior to all our injuries, Hayes isn't really getting any game time. So, it's probably beneficial for him. He may go across and become another Papali'i story. Who knows?
Possibly. I had him in my team in my review when I was predicting what team would be announced before Tuesday. I had him in my team in the centres because I still thought Fusatu was out. So I thought he'd come in. The Warriors have picked Jack Murchie. If that's actually going to be what happens is another story. We'll have to wait till Sunday to find out who's actually going to be there. But before that, I had him as my guy to offer the Broncos to get Reece Walsh here. So it's not a surprise they've let him go. It's just, again, the timing. And I feel like they've always got a reason, I think. As much as the Papali stuff is being used, they offered Papali a deal and he said no. So they didn't let him go. He chose to leave in that scenario. And by the sounds of things, it was the last year on Haynes' deal, and I think he'd basically been told he wasn't going to get re-signed at the end of the year. So it just sounds like he's asked if he could go early, which is, fair. Fingers crossed that he does well at Parramatta if that's where he ends up. I don't really see him coming into the back line there anytime soon either. But if it gives him an opportunity, if he wants an opportunity, he's got a chance there. So, good luck. And now we may as well get into the naughty boy corner. It was quite an interesting week for ill discipline. I haven't put them all down, but I've picked the big four. So first, fan favorite of mine, Jack Hetherington. He's accepted a 5-match ban for his high tackle on Valentine Holmes. Normally it's a 2 to 3 week ban, but due to his shocking record, they've just thrown the book at him. We talked about it a lot last year. There was a lot of questions about should the Warriors sign Jack, and I was all for it if you could keep his discipline in check. Clearly the Bulldogs like the aggression he shows, but they've been punished here. There was a few weeks ago in a game, he almost ran the risk of it being on a ban there too. So it was coming, and I think there was some stat that for like 29 games he's played, he's missed 10. So it's shocking. He spends more time in the courts than he does on the field.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a rap sheet, doesn't he? I think that doesn't work in his favor whenever he has to face the judiciary. hopefully he doesn't become pigeonholed as that type of player. We don't want to see him ending up like a what was this, Hopewadi, like with a record like that kind of thing. But it's just something he has to rein in, because we all know when he's playing well, he's big and explosive and fast for a forward. The sky's the limit for him. He just has to keep that top 2 inches in check.
Yeah, 100%. And next one was Latrell Mitchell. He received a 4-match ban after contesting his grade 2 dangerous contact charge. I believe it would have been 3 weeks if he pled guilty, but they decided to fight it, knowing the risk was just an extra week. And he didn't get off there, so he's off for a month. Big loss for the Rabbitohs. He was basically top of the Dally M's after the game this week, and that's basically all gone with a month off. So bad news for them, but the Rabbitohs are a good side. I'm sure they'll adjust without him. I think Latrell and Cody Walker, really, for the Rabbitohs, are very similar to Jack Hetherington on a smaller scale, where they just sometimes have brain snaps where they'll do something silly and get in trouble for it. So they just got to work on that. Work on being competitive and aggressive, but not going too far. Yeah,
I'd say they're emotional players. I think is a good way to look at it. I mean, fantastic footy players, but they can be rubbed the wrong way, and they can be targeted by opposition. You get under their skin a bit, and they may do something stupid. But yeah, you could have picked. I think he was being looked at for a couple of different. I think there was 3 or 4 different things he did during that game. I know there was the forearm to Norfaluma's face, the kick out at Ghana, where he nearly kicked him in the face. So yeah, it wasn't the cleanest night at the office for Latrell, even if he was playing well.
No, yeah. I think this ban was for the Norfaluma charge. I think he's paying a $1,500 fine for trying to kick Ghana in the face. Yeah, not a good night for him. But he also ended the night with 3 Dally M points, which was interesting to have all those issues and still get voted like the best player of the game. C. Jordan's put a comment in saying, how did Radley get off scot-free but Mitchell didn't? Both innocents deserve punishment. And Gavin Gould's commented Mitchell got loading. Yeah, Mitchell had some prior offences, which didn't help his favour. I think Radley was lucky to get off scot-free, but he's just got to keep his nose clean now, because those points will stay on, and he'll be top loaded for the next time he gets his nose out of joint. So I think it's a matter of when, not if, Victor Radley gets himself in trouble again. And then we've got Big Tino from the Titans. He's been banned for 2 weeks after pleading guilty for a shoulder charge. His one, we're going to talk about that game soon, but I think his one was just down to frustration. Manly kind of kept the Titans well contained, and he was trying to make an impact, and he did it in the wrong way.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, because that game was not going the way that the Titans' previous games are going, and I think you could visibly see the frustration. But, you can't go around shoulder charging people, so he'll take a seat.
Exactly. Yeah. And then quickly, before we move on to the reviews, the last one was Panthers centre Paul Momorowski was charged with a 3-week ban after his grade 2 contact to the head and neck against Tom Dearden. This one I thought I was expecting maybe 2 weeks, but I think it's the fact, again, they fought it, so he got a little bit more punishment. But he's not really a dirty player, so I think it was just, I didn't think there was too much in it. I thought it kind of slid up off the shoulder. But you can't really hit, we still can't really hit a halfback and not get in trouble.
Yeah, that one was interesting in that during the game, it wasn't even a penalty on the field, although I think it was probably worthy of a penalty. But yeah, it was quite high and late. Nothing too bad. like Hetherington's, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the round 6 review where we're running low a bit on time. On Thursday, we had the Panthers defeat the Broncos 20-12. Panthers still undefeated, but the Broncos made them work for it.
Did they ever? The Broncos, for me, almost were the better team for the majority of that game. Their forwards were great. I think a lot of their forwards stepped up. Tavita Pangai Jr. was one of the standouts, but Matt Lodge and Haas were both really good too, eating up lots of meters. And young Ethan Bullimore came on off the bench, had a big impact and scored a nice try as well. I think definitely the Broncos' best game of the season. It was just the class of Cleary to pull it out of the fire, even though they weren't at their best.
Yeah, definitely. Penrith got out of jail here. They're still the team to beat, but I think this match showed that they're far from being unbeatable.
Absolutely.
And then we'll go into the first game on Friday with the Knights beating the Sharks 26-22. The only game we didn't agree on last week, and it went down to the wire. We were talking throughout the game, flicking texts saying, I told you I was right, and then like, oh no, my bad, I got it wrong. But yeah, it was basically Kalen Ponga, I think. He kind of orchestrated the Knights. Sharks made it look like they almost had the win in the bag, and then Ponga was back there to end the game.
Yeah, this game was really exciting. This was one of the heart attack finish games, and I think you're spot on when you say you could almost say Kalen Ponga was the difference. I mean, I think if this game was played 2 weeks ago and Ponga's not playing, the Knights wouldn't have won that one. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, he came up with big plays when they needed him, and that was the difference.
Yeah. And the Sharks, it's a cruel end to a hard week for them with all the changes with the coaching staff and that. But the return of Sean Johnson this week should at least have their fans excited.
Yeah, that's a big one for the Sharks. They'll be happy about that for sure.
Yeah, and then the last game on Friday, we had the Storm defeating the Roosters 20-4. First half, I thought was really bad. Both teams were playing like bottom 8 teams, dropping the ball everywhere. And then at halftime, that same Roosters team came out, but the Storm came out better. Just a clinical performance in the second half by the Storm.
It was. And I think, the first half was messy and a lot of handling errors, but I think there was a lot of really tough defense as well. I think it looked like both teams came out early and looking like they wanted to get the physical edge. And then in the second half, the little men took over. Harry Grant came on and had a massive impact. Pappenhausen was doing bits and pieces, although he was sort of hurt throughout different times of the match. And they kind of flexed their muscle in the second half and pulled away.
Yeah, and I think they showed what happens to the Roosters if their halves are pressured. They're the first team to have done it since the young halves have come in. And if the Roosters can't protect those two, they're going to have a long season ahead.
Yeah, a bit of controversy too with different players needing to go off for HIA. And I noticed Munster looked like he was knocked out for a moment there, and he went off and came back on like 30 seconds later. But I'm sure, bit's been talked about that. But otherwise, the Storm, not too surprising for me at home. They're pretty damn hard to beat, and the Roosters with their rookie halves, slight bridge too far for them. Yeah.
Then the first game on Saturday, we had the Sea Eagles defeating the Titans 36-0. Where did this match come from? It kind of made me feel better that the Warriors only lost by 1 last week, because the Titans are meant to be so much better side than the Warriors are, and they didn't even show up. Tommy Turbo obviously had a big impact on the game, but I think all the Manly side played a lot better.
I did not see this one coming at all. I actually tipped the Titans for a pretty heavy victory. And I don't know, maybe it was a little bit the Titans taking Manly lightly. But also, this is another game, along with the Knights game, where if you've got a premier fullback, they can make such a massive difference. And Tommy Turbo coming on didn't take him long into the first half, and he already sort of stamped his mark and was laying on try assists and got a nice try of his own. So, yeah, they're a different beast when he's there.
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they go now. That might have been the confidence they needed. Got a tough game this week, but we'll see what happens there when we go into the previews. The next game on Saturday was the Rabbitohs beating the Tigers 18-14 in Golden Point. This was probably the match of the round for me, and I think the finish made it that with Tom Burgess scoring a try in Golden Point, looking like he knocked it on, the ref saying play on, and as the Rabbitohs are all celebrating the win, Luke Brooks is jogging the other way and scores at the other end, and then the ref had to just send it up to the bunker and say, I don't know what happened, but can you figure it out, please? With the bunker saying, yeah, Burgess had enough. And as an impartial fan, I could have gone either way and said that he didn't have control. But it is what it is there, unfortunately, for Tigers fans. But I think the Tigers, after such a poor performance last week, they definitely gave the Rabbitohs everything they could and almost got the victory.
Yeah, they showed you can unsettle the Rabbitohs, and they did just that, and they nearly executed it perfectly. They just ran out of steam. Yeah, that finish was crazy. It was that was absolutely crazy. I'm glad I wasn't a Rabbitohs or Tigers fan watching that finish, because I would have had a heart attack. But for me, I think I'm happy enough that Burgess grounded that ball. I think you play it in full speed, and I think he's still got fingertips on that. But yeah, it was a fantastic game, and again, so close but so far for the underdog, and just a bit of class at the end got the Rabbitohs there. Funnily enough, I thought it might be a Adam Reynolds magic, and he hit the big long 2-point field goal, and then his goal kicking boots and field goal boots deserted him after that, and they needed to rely on a front rower to do the job. Brad, you would have liked that.
Yeah, you should always rely on a front rower to carry your team. So it was good to see. Eddie, as Simon's mentioned, they should have stopped the match while the bunker was looking at it. Yeah, it was interesting that I think the ref just panicked in the Golden Point situation. Instead of going, let's go upstairs and look, he just said play on. And the Tigers, to their credit, played on. It just unfortunate for them that the try had already been scored. So interesting. Despite the loss, I think they'll be confident coming out of that, and I think it was just a slight hiccup for the Rabbitohs, and I'm sure they'll come out a lot stronger this week too.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, and so the last game on Saturday, we saw the Eels wipe the floor with the Raiders, 35-10. It's another surprising result here. I picked the Raiders, but I thought even if the Eels did get the win, it would be at least close. But to be honest, the Raiders didn't even look like they were in this match. It's the second match in a row where they've really looked bad. Eels just continue to look really good. Despite their loss to the Dragons, I still think they're one of the top teams, and they just got stars all over the place. And I think the Raiders have to go back to the drawing board here.
I like you thought, well, I tipped the Raiders, but I didn't think it would be, as I don't think it'd be as much of a blowout as it ended up being. But the Eels were playing really well, and they were controlled well by Mitchell Moses, and Isaiah Papali'i continues to be, one of the signings of the year. It was quite cool seeing him run over the top of Josh Papali'i to get the first try. Man, looks like he's come a long way.
Yeah. Great showing from him, and I'm sure the Raiders they've made a few changes for this week's game, and I'm sure we're going to see a better performance out of them this week. And I think the Eels will just continue doing what they do. So that leads us to the first game on Sunday with the Warriors defeating the Dragons 20-14. Warriors kind of went from their worst performance of the year to their best in this one, with a record-breaking 40 out of 41 sets. For most of the day on Monday, it was 100%. It was 40 from 40, but the NRL found another set in there somewhere and took it away. But I think it was a good game. It was the 5th win in a row for the Warriors over the Dragons, which has generally been a hoodoo team for them. And I think they just strangled the Dragons out of the match. When you're not making errors, it's really hard for the opposition to try to get past you. And the Warriors did enough to get there. They improved their attack by a smidge. They improved their defense quite a bit. And the Dragons just weren't up to task.
Yeah, I think the biggest improvement for me was just the overall attitude. You can see it on the completions, but also how gutsy we were, because we lost Peter Hiku early. I think about 5 minutes in, we lost Peter Hiku and had to bring young Paul Turner in. And then we lost a couple more. Later in the game, we ended up losing Pompey. So we were towards the end of the game there. We had a bit of a reshuffled back line, but we held strong. So for me, it was the attitude that was the winner for us. It was really nice to see.
Yeah, and hopefully that attitude stays, because they've got a big matchup this week, which we'll cover in the previews. But that brings us to the last game. We probably don't need to talk about this one too much. It was the Cowboys and Bulldogs, with the Cowboys winning 30-18. The game I was looking forward to the least, with the worst two teams of the comp basically playing each other, and the game kind of showed they were both patchy on attack, and the Bulldogs really only looked like they were going to get into it after Jack Hetherington was sent off and they had to play with 12 men. They started a comeback, but the Cowboys had already done the damage early, and then they scored one more try to end it. So the Cowboys look better, but I think they'll be back on planet Earth this week when they play the Raiders.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you there. But yeah, it was a bit of a lackluster game, and I guess we can just focus in on the big talking point on the game was Hetherington being sent. I was interested in what you thought, Brad. What did you think that was the correct call, to be a send-off, or maybe a sin bin would have been sufficient, or do you think maybe it's Hetherington, so see you later?
Yeah, I think a sin bin would have been more than enough. But yeah, due to his history, I think he was always going to get the worst punishment. If it had been someone else out there that did it, that had a squeaky clean record, it probably would have just been a sin binning. But I don't think it was really going to matter. The Bulldogs weren't going to win that match anyway if they had 20 players out there. So, wasn't too good. So that was round 6. Our picks, we only had one different, which was the Sharks Knights game. So Richie got 5 out of 8 this week, and I got 4 out of 8. So our totals, Richie's in the lead once again at 32 out of 48, and I'm one behind on 31 out of 48. Having a quick look at the table there, Panthers, the only undefeated team still, they're number 1, followed by the Rabbitohs, Eels, and Storm to round out the top 4, followed by the Roosters, Dragons, Titans, and Warriors to finish the 8. Raiders, Knights, Sharks are just below them at 9, 10, 11. Manly's jumped up after that impressive win to 12th, and then you've kind of got the bottom feeders with the Cowboys, Broncos, Tigers, and Dragons. Out of them, I think it's really going to be Cowboys, Broncos, and Bulldogs now fighting for that spoon. Depending on how the Broncos go, I think the Tigers will climb up a bit, and the Dragons will fall, but unfortunately they're not going to fall that far.
It's just nice seeing the Warriors sit in the 8 there, Brad.
Yeah. Exactly. So any questions from the audience there, Paul?
Oops, I've got my hat. Dear me. We had a couple earlier on. So Gavin Gould wants to say, what do you guys think about the signings this week? Hastings to Tigers and Townsend to Cowboys, very interesting signings, he says.
Yeah, I think both of them will strengthen the teams they're going to. I think we mentioned it earlier with Hastings. It'll just be how he adjusts coming back from the Super League. But we're seeing with the Raiders with George Williams, he came into the NRL and came out pretty strong. Jackson's already had experience there before. I think they'll both do well.
Yeah, I agree. What's even more interesting is the other halfbacks. So you've got Adam Reynolds, Dearden, and also the Broncos apparently looking at Mitchell Moses if Dearden moves on to the Cowboys. So more interesting halfback movements to come, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have lots of news in the upcoming weeks about that.
And we were talking earlier, Bob. We were talking pre-show about a young player leaving or being cut from the Warriors. Nigel Phillips says, with a few of our younger players moving on these past few weeks, do you see it as a Kearney effect with not enough done to develop them in a way to bring out their potential while he was in charge?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue the Warriors have had for like the past 4 or 5 years is their lackluster junior program. A lot of these kids, like the Haynes Perhams and that, we don't have a good enough junior league in New Zealand for them to play and get better. So if they're not playing for the Warriors, they're not really doing much. I didn't think much of their the Vulcans like feeder club area. So I think with Gould coming in and building that's going to get better. But a lot of these kids, the only way they were going to get better in the NRL is by leaving, as we've seen with Papali'i, Chance, and the like. So, it probably just means you're going to end up paying $1 million to get him back here when he's a superstar.
Cool. That's all the questions from the live chat, guys.
Cool. Thank you. And we're running a bit low on time.
Any new developments in the latest Parramatta scandal?
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that one, Jordan.
I haven't heard too much more about the sex tape scandal. So yeah, okay. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I'm sure if we can get some more information, we'll let you know.
We won't be putting out the videos. Don't worry, guys.
No,
that I'm afraid.
But we're running a bit low on time, Rich. So I'll leave our questions for later on. So we'll just go straight into the round 7 preview and our picks. Thursday night we've got the Panthers and the Knights playing at Bluebet Stadium. I've got the Panthers here for a win. I think I've lost you for a sec, Richie.
Sorry, looks like Richie's been cut off. He's not paid his phone bill.
Not paid his bill. So I've got his picks here anyway. So we've both picked the Panthers in this match. The next match we had the Titans versus Rabbitohs in the Gold Coast. We've both picked the Rabbitohs here. Then the next game was the Eels versus the Broncos in Darwin. We've both picked the Eels. I think the Eels are showing they're still too strong. First game on Saturday is the Sharks versus the Bulldogs. We've both picked the Sharks. No big surprise there. Second game on Saturday is the Cowboys versus the Raiders. We've both picked the Raiders. First game on Sunday, because of Anzac Day, they got 3 games on Sunday. So we've got the Tigers versus the Eagles at Bank West. We've actually both picked the Sea Eagles. So that win last week was enough to change our decisions on how they'll go. Before the Roosters play the Dragons, we've both picked the Roosters. Before we end the game, in the round with the Storm versus the Warriors in their annual Anzac clash, we've both picked the Storm here. It'd be great to see the Warriors get a win here, but traditionally on Anzac Day, they don't go too well. So for our overall picks again, we've all picked the same. So it means Richie will be in the lead again next week. Will be interesting to see. But yeah.
You're too kind. You had the perfect opportunities to really
change his picks.
Change all his picks. And boy, see, Richie, he's just too nice to you. You've come back just after he's finished it. He could have ditched you, but no, he was very good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
I was just going to say
Appreciate the honesty.
he just messaged me to say that there had been a power cut in Wellington, which is why he disappeared on us. But yeah, I just went through the picks, and I had your picks anyway, so
Thanks, mate.
it was weird you picked all the teams that are underdogs, but yeah, it's cool. So before we leave, yes, thanks, Simon. We've got Catalan Dragons have improved the last couple of weeks in both halves. Yeah, they actually played quite well in the Challenge Cup, which I wanted to go over last week, but we ran out of time. So round 3 of the Challenge Cup went as follows. We had Castleford Tigers defeating Hull KR 33-32. Wigan defeating the York City Knights 26-0. Salford wiping the floor wins Vikings 68-4. St Helens defeated Leeds 26-18. Catalans defeated Wakefield Trinity 26-6. Hull FC defeated Featherstone 34-14. Warrington defeated Swinton 32-8, and Huddersfield defeated Lee 36-18. The winning teams there go into the quarterfinals, which will be playing on the 7th and 8th of May. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then, yeah, before we go, we had the Super League round 3 results. So Wigan defeated Leeds 19-6. Castleford defeated Lee 52-16. St Helens defeated Wakefield Trinity 34-6. Hull KR just got out of jail against Huddersfield 25-24. Then Catalans, as Simon mentioned, had a great game defeating Salford 46-6. Before the last game was a draw with Hull FC and Warrington Wolves going 14-all. So, yeah, Catalans have been playing really well. It's kind of expected. They kind of always be there and thereabouts now. Got a great squad. So that's really all we have time for tonight. Hopefully we answered all your questions. I see Simon's got his predictions here, so we may as well say those two. He's picked the Panthers by 8, Titans by 2, Eels by 10, Sharks by 8, Raiders by 6, Sea Eagles by 6, Roosters by 6, and then Warriors by 4.
Good man, Simon.
I really hope you're right there.
Me too.
The only pick I really like getting wrong is if I pick against the Warriors and they win. It's kind of a bittersweet victory there that I got my pick wrong, but the Warriors got the win. So, and I see Nigel. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And you've picked the Warriors by 1. Warriors win will be a great end to the round. So fingers crossed there. So thank you all for joining us tonight on the Standoff with Brad and Richie. For your weekly update on rugby league, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. here on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Thanks again for joining me, Richie, and good night, everyone.
Thanks all.